start today's afternoon session by a recitation of the Holy Quran by Zafar Sarwar Sahib.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أوحينا إليك كما أوحينا إلى نوح والنبيين من بعده وأوحينا إلى إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق ويعقوب والأسباط وعيسى وأيوب ويونس وهارون وسليمان وآتينا داود زبورا ورسلا قد قصصناهم عليك من قبل ورسلا لم نقصصهم عليك وكلم الله موسى تكليما رسلا مبشرين ومنذرين لئلا يكون للناس على الله حجة بعد الرسل وكان الله عزيزا حكيما لكن الله يشهد بما أنزل إليك أنزله بعلمه والملائكة يشهدون وكفى بالله شهيدا.
Assalamu alaikum. Translation of Al-Nisa, chapter 4, verses 164 through 167. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Surely we have sent revelation to thee, as we sent revelation to Noah and the prophets after him. And we sent revelation to Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac and Jacob and his children, and to Jesus and Job and Jonah and Aaron and Solomon. And we gave David a book. And we sent some messengers whom we have already mentioned to thee, and some messengers whom we have not mentioned to thee. And to Moses, Allah spoke at great length. Messengers, bearers of glad tidings and warners, so that people may have no plea against Allah after the coming of the messengers. And Allah is mighty, wise. But Allah bears witness by means of the revelation which He sent down to thee, that He has sent it down full of His knowledge. And the angels also bear witness. And sufficient is Allah as a witness.
Jazakallah. Poem by Asad Chaudhry Sahib.
السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ.
وعلیکم السلام.
کلام حضرت مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام. خدا کے پاک لوگوں کو خدا سے نصرت آتی ہے. خدا کے پاک لوگوں کو خدا سے نصرت آتی ہے. جب آتی ہے تو پھر عالم کو ایک عالم دکھاتی ہے. جب آتی ہے تو پھر عالم کو ایک عالم دکھاتی ہے. وہ بنتی ہے ہوا اور ہر خس راہ کو اڑاتی ہے. وہ بنتی ہے ہوا اور ہر خس راہ کو اڑاتی ہے. وہ ہو جاتی ہے آگ اور ہر مخالف کو جلاتی ہے. وہ ہو جاتی ہے آگ اور ہر مخالف کو جلاتی ہے. کبھی وہ خاک ہو کر دشمنوں کے سر پہ پڑتی ہے. کبھی وہ خاک ہو کر دشمنوں کے سر پہ پڑتی ہے. کبھی ہو کر وہ پانی ان پہ ایک طوفان لاتی ہے، کبھی ہو کر وہ پانی ان پہ ایک طوفان لاتی ہے۔
نعرہ تکبیر، نعرہ تکبیر، نعرہ تکبیر۔ اسلام احمدیت، غلام احمد کی خلافت احمدیہ، حضرت امیر المومنین، نعرہ تکبیر۔
خدا کے پاک غرض رکتے نہیں ہرگز، خدا کے کام بندوں سے غرض رکتے نہیں ہرگز، خدا کے کام بندوں سے، بھلا خالق کے آگے خلق کی کچھ پیش جاتی ہے، بھلا خالق کے آگے خلق کی کچھ پیش جاتی ہے۔
نعرہ تکبیر، اسلام احمدیت، شہدائے احمدیت، اسیران راہ مولا، جلسہ سالانہ USA، نعرہ تکبیر۔
غرض رکتے نہیں ہرگز، خدا کے کام بندوں سے، بھلا خالق کے آگے خلق کی کچھ پیش جاتی ہے، خدا کے پاک لوگوں کو خدا سے نصرت آتی ہے، جب آتی ہے تو پھر عالم کو ایک عالم دکھاتی ہے، خدا سے نصرت آتی ہے۔
جزاک اللہ. Bashir Asad Sahib to kindly translate this poem.
Assalamu alaikum. In the name of Allah, the Gracious, the Merciful. This poem is entitled, The Help of God. God's help comes without fail to rescue His people who are pure of heart. When His help arrives, the world wonders and watches an awe-inspiring turn of events. It becomes a strong wind, sweeping the path clear of all rubbish. or at times it turns into a raging fire, reducing the opponents into heaps of ashes. At times it becomes dust and falls on the heads of the foes. And on other occasions, it becomes water, raising a powerful flood. In short, God's designs cannot be stopped by rebellious men. Creation is indeed helpless in front of the all-powerful Creator. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah. I'm going to request Hassan Hakim Sahib to talk to us about introduction to Ahmadiyya Muslim Community USA.
Respected Amir Sahib, Most Honorable Mayor of Harrisburg, Linda D. Thompson, and honored guests and brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, peace be upon you, and the mercy and blessings of God. My name is Hassan Hakim, but I was born an American and raised as a Christian. It was in the year of 1967 that I chose to accept Islam and join the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, which was established by a man from a remote village in India named Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, peace be upon him. You might ask, why would the message of an Indian Muslim resonate with an African American Christian? Of course, the reason I accepted Islam and Ahmadiyyat was that I came to recognize its truthfulness. The reason I stayed was that my experience has confirmed this belief. Every movement is built upon belief and action, and the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is no different. The founding principles or central ideas of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community are enshrined in the 10 conditions of initiation laid down by the promised Messiah, alayhi salam, himself. The greatest hallmark of our country is its diversity. Our diversity has transformed us into a most powerful nation, both economically and philosophically. As a nation of immigrants, America opened its doors to different people who brought with them their cultures, creeds, and ideas. This exchange of ideas wove the very fabric of our flag. It defined us as a nation and the values that we are committed to. There's a special meaning to being an American. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. As an American, you have a voice. Respect is a right that we all are entitled to, and with it, each of us formed a valuable part of the mosaic we call American culture. Yet it's ironic that many Americans fear the very diversity which has helped us achieve greatness. Today, many Americans fear Islam. We in the Ahmadiyya Muslim community need to change that. One man who tried to change that was Mufti Muhammad Sadiq, Raziallahu anhu. He came to this country in 1920 wearing his trademark green turban and his long flowing robes. But this immigrant was different. He didn't come here looking for luxuries. He didn't come here looking for a big house. He didn't come here looking for the economic comforts or business opportunities. He wasn't looking to receive, but merely to give. As an Ahmadi Muslim missionary, he came here to share the good news that the Messiah, a man with a life-giving message of peace, would unite all of us in the bonds of brotherhood. It didn't matter who you were or where you came from. Islam had a home for all. Although his message was eagerly embraced, that same message was feared with suspicion. When he arrived, he was immediately detained and interrogated. One man's intelligence is another man's ignorance, and it's up to us to educate the American people about the truth of Islam. As millions of American Christians were already expecting the Messiah, Sadiq found hundreds of eager converts in his first few months. He established missions here in the United States and planted the seeds of the longest running Muslim magazine in America, The Muslim Sunrise. Because of its teachings and practice of universal brotherhood, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community attracted many black Americans who assumed leadership roles within the movement. During this period that he was here, Dr. Mufti Muhammad Sadiq became friends with Jamaican-born Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Garvey had captured the imagination of many black people around the world and in the United States during the 20s. Hundreds of thousands became dues-paying members of the UNIA. Marcus Garvey has the distinction of starting the first extensive civil rights movement among black Americans. In 1923, Dr. Sadiq gave 5 lectures at the UNI meetings in Detroit. Eventually, he converted 40 Garveyites to Ahmadiyya. The most noteworthy of these converts was a former Christian minister, Reverend Sutton, who was named Sheikh Abdul Salam and was appointed the leader of the Detroit branch of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Now that you who've come here, especially you who have come here from distant lands recently, and many of you don't really understand that history of Ahmadiyya in America and how it relates to the African American community. So I beg you here today, I beg all of you, if you have not seen the African American exhibit out here in the hallways, you need to see that exhibit. I don't say you need, I say you must see that exhibit. Because when you see that exhibit, then you come to understand what the Ahmadiyya Muslim community means to America. Since 1920, Ahmadiyya has left an indelible mark on this country. And as an African American, I stand before you today, humbly, the son of slaves, only knowing that I return to my Lord as nothing more than a handful of dust. As a result of this Ahmadiyya spirit that flows through me, a battle constantly rages inside me to serve, to tell America the Messiah has come.
Nara Takbir! Nara Takbir! Islam Ahmadiyyat! Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa! Ghulam Ahmad ki! Nara Takbir!
My African American brothers and sisters, who are here today, the sons and daughters of America, know that we cannot waste time in this short life on mere mediocrity. We act upon our belief that God will support us in our good works and preach the message of Islam, of true Islam, which teaches us how to attain peace at the individual and social levels. And in preaching the true teachings of Islam, we counter those misguided clerics who use Islam to justify violence and extremism. We wage a peaceful jihad and a battle for the hearts and minds of the Muslim world and beyond. What are the outcomes of our actions? Each year, tens of thousands of people from around the world join the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Many years ago, I was one of those people. As I stand before you today, I stand witness to the sea of diversity in Islam. It was the sea of diversity in Islam that attracted me to the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. I see Americans originating from Africa, from Asia, Europe, and Latin America. I see the diversity of your cultures, your professions, your ideas. You all have a place in my vision and in the greater vision of God. You each are part of a larger picture painted by the hand of God, and each of you has a place in Islam. Each of you has a place in conveying the message of peace through the Messiah. I say to you now, it's time to wake up America to the beauty of Islam. Wake up America to the difference it has made in your lives. Wake up America to the message of the Messiah. The long and enduring history.
Takbir! Islam Ahmadiyyat! USA! USA! Narae Takbir.
The long and enduring history of Ahmadiyyat in America cannot and will not be defined, marginalized, and maligned by ignorance, bigotry, and hatred. Now is the future for Ahmadiyyat. What say ye, Ahmadis? What say you? Let us not waste these great blessings of Khilafat, which affords us the protection, security, and confidence that was demonstrated through Muslims for loyalty, Muslims for peace, and Muslims for life. All were blessed by our Khalifa. All were blessed by our Khalifa.
Khilafat-e-Ahmadiyya. Khilafat-e-Ahmadiyya. Hazrat Amirul Mu'mineen. Narae Takbir.
I say to you Ahmadis who are here today, I say to you believers who are sitting with me today, now is the future. Now we must deliver with even more passion our message, the same message that was brought to America by our first missionary in 1920, peace through the Messiah. Let us all pray that we will prove worthy to that task. God bless us all. God bless America.
Narae Takbir. USA.
Jazakallah. At this time, I'm going to request Amjad Mahmood Khan Sahib to kindly come and moderate our guest speakers.
Good afternoon. I begin in the name of Allah, most gracious, ever merciful, honored guests and convention delegates, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is the Islamic greeting of peace and blessings on all of you. Welcome to the 64th annual Jalsa Salana convention of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, USA, which is the oldest and longest established American Muslim organization. We are delighted to be holding this year's convention once again in the beautiful city of Harrisburg. It is truly an honor and privilege to be given an opportunity to introduce to all of you several special guests, dignitaries, public officials, and friends of our community. And throughout the duration of these proceedings, and also the dinner proceedings, I will be making those introductions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, and she is Linda Thompson, the mayor of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Mayor Thompson is Harrisburg's first female and first African-American mayor. Born and raised in Harrisburg, she graduated from Harrisburg High School in 1979, and she went on to attend Howard University in Washington, D.C., where she received a BS in Communications, and while there, she also worked as an intern at the U.S. Department of Justice. She has been a great friend of our community and has attended this convention in the past. It is a pleasure to welcome her to our annual convention.
Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you. May God's blessing be upon you. And may God's blessing be upon your good works. On behalf of the citizens of this city of Harrisburg, I welcome you with peace and respect to our beautiful city. It is an honor for me to welcome His Holiness, Hadrat Mazar Masroor Ahmad V, Caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, to our city. May peace and blessings be upon His Holiness. This is an historic day, and we are grateful for His Holiness' presence and the sense of peace and interreligious harmony He brings with Him into our community. He delivers the peaceful message of Islam the true meaning of Islam that has been sustained throughout the long history of Islamic thinking and community service. May peace and blessings be upon his good works and profound teachings. We are graced by the presence of His Holiness and the message he brings of world peace and universal service to humanity. We are in harmony with the tens of millions of members of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community who work in 200 countries for peace and to serve underprivileged humanity around the world. We are in harmony with Your Holiness, and we are happy to welcome into and welcome in peace those thousands of Ahmadiyya Muslims who are visiting with us here in the city of Harrisburg today. And we welcome those millions of Ahmadiyyas who are watching this gathering now on television. Once again, you have chosen our beautiful community as an appropriate gathering place for Jalsa Salana 2012, the 64th annual convention of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. May God's blessing be upon all of you. The city of Harrisburg is the state capital of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And from this city's very first origins in the American Revolution, we have been a diverse people, a people committed to fundamental human rights, such as freedom of speech, equality, and freedom of religion. The theme of this year's gathering is in keeping with His Holiness' world mission: global peace, universal service to humanity, especially service to those who are the least of those among us. And these are great and noble undertakings. And these are fundamental humane principles which are shared by all the great religions of the world, as well as by those who choose no religious practice. Peace and service are the aspirations of all the peoples of the world, and we thank His Holiness for calling the world's attention to these fundamental principles. Like His Holiness, we believe service, humble and humane service, is the foundation of peace in the world. The Quran teaches, "Do not turn away a poor man, even if you all can give is half a date. If you love the poor and bring them near you, God will bring you near Him on the day of resurrection." All the great religions of the earth recognize that through an empathetic understanding of our common human state of existence, we will discover ourselves in the self of the other, and thereby create an appropriate human context of peace. As the Prophet of Muhammad said, "None of you truly believes until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself." Unfortunately, certain extremist Islamic groups and certain others have depicted Islam in such a way that it appears to be an uncivilized, extremist, belligerent, and bellicose religion. Moderate and thoughtful citizens everywhere around the world know that this is not to be true. Peace is the natural state of all humanity. We all aspire to peace regardless of the race or religious orientation. Human life is extremely sacred in Muslim thought. Not only Muslim life, but all human life is considered very sacred in Muslim teachings. If anyone saved a life, it would be as if he saved the life of the whole people, the Quran teaches us. Peace is essential to the future of our planet, and we cannot advance the highest levels of technology and science without a firm foundation in the service of humanity, especially service to those in the world who are in need of education, as well as economic and social justice. His Holiness teaches that peace and service cannot be accomplished by force, but through the winning of hearts with love and affection. It is the rich tradition and wisdom of the Ahmadiyya community that teaches us not to take up the sword, but to spread peace through the individual beatitudes of the Ahmadiyya faith and to attract others peacefully through one's exemplary behavior. Your community teaches jihad of the pen, with a commitment to modernize Islam through education, moderation, and restraint. The Ahmadiyya community accepts the Messiah, and you are a bridge to the great faiths of the world in these often turbulent religious times. You teach a separation of church and state in keeping with United States law and contemporary thinking on this sometimes sensitive subject. And I fully appreciate and welcome you and your advocacy for universal human rights and protections for minorities and religious freedom for all. And may God bless your wise and historic teachings. And therefore, on behalf of the citizens of this great city, I take great pride in welcoming His Holiness Hadrat Mazar Ahmad, the 5th Caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and the 2012 Jalsa Salana for the peaceful city of Harrisburg. And may God bless you and bring you peace. And may God bless you and the good works of the Ahmadiyya community. God bless you. Thank you.
Mayor of Harrisburg, Miss Linda Thompson. Mayor of Harrisburg, Miss Linda Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson, for those inspiring words. This is indeed a historic year, a year in which our beloved Khalifa of Islam, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, is here with us and gracing us with his presence. A few days ago, His Holiness visited Washington, D.C. for the first time. And while there, he attended a special reception that was in honor of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and his trip. And there were over 30 members of Congress who were present and over 140 dignitaries at a very special occasion. And we thought we would share a few highlights of that event just a few days ago for the benefit of the General Convention audience. I'll ask the MTA team to please play that clip.
On June 27, 2012, a historic event occurred in Washington, D.C. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih V, may Allah strengthen his hand, met with leading congressmen and senators and other leaders at Capitol Hill. The meeting, the first of its kind, gave an opportunity to some of the most influential leaders in the United States to hear firsthand Islam's message on world peace. This, however, was not the first major event held at Capitol Hill by the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, USA. 1 year prior, as part of the Muslims for Life campaign, a large-scale blood drive was held at the same location. The campaign, which raised over 10,000 units of blood nationwide, had the support of congressmen and senators, several of whom donated blood themselves. Building on this successful humanitarian effort, the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community USA held an event to give legislators, ambassadors, academics, and other leaders in American politics an opportunity to meet and engage Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the 5th Khalifa after Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, peace be upon him. After arriving at Capitol Hill, Huzur was greeted by Congressman Brad Sherman and Senator Robert Casey. Huzur then had a private audience with Congressman Mike Honda, Brad Sherman, and Senator Robert Casey. The discussion was candid and revolved on many topics, including education. The main event took place in the Gold Room of the Rayburn Building, adjacent to the Capitol. Over 150 dignitaries, including members of Congress, diplomatic corps, the executive branch, faith leaders, and academics. The program started with a recitation of the Holy Quran and introductory remarks by Amjad Khan. Several congressmen and senators offered their welcome.
Holiness, I want to thank you for your great leadership, the example and the demonstrated commitment that you've shown to tolerance and to justice and to peace. And as a Pennsylvanian, and we're especially grateful that you'll be visiting Pennsylvania as part of your trip. On this day, we draw inspiration from you, from your work, and from your followers, not only here in the United States, but the world over. God bless you, and thank you.
The final introductory remarks were delivered by House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi.
Because you are a man, though of humble beginnings, your leadership has made you a figure of global prominence. You started as a teacher, and you have become a guide for millions of Muslims worldwide. You work to help farmers in Ghana, that humble task, and you remain a force for progress across borders, an advocate for investment in the developing world. You have been persecuted for your beliefs, jailed for your faith, and exiled from your homeland, but you refuse to turn to bitterness or vengeance. And that is a very important lesson.
The keynote speech by Huzur was on the path to peace, just relations between nations.
The truth is that peace and justice are inseparable. You cannot have one without the other. And certainly, this principle is something that all wise and intelligent people understand. Leaving aside those people who are determined to create disorder in the world. No one can ever claim that in any society, country, or even the entire world, there can be disorder or a lack of peace where justice and fair dealing exists. What does Islam say in relation to international relations that are based on justice and so a means of establishing peace? It is also made clear that all people should be granted equal rights without any discrimination or prejudice. This is the key and golden principle that lays the foundation for harmony between different groups and nations and for the establishment of peace.
After the event, a special guided tour of Capitol Hill was provided. Concluding this extraordinary day was a resolution introduced in Congress and sponsored by 19 congressional leaders, highlighting Huzur's visit to the halls of Congress and recognizing his commitment to peace.
Our next speaker comes from Texas. She's Dr. Paula Sanders, the Dean of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies, Vice Provost for Academic Affairs at Rice University in Houston. She earned her PhD from Princeton University in 1984. She has a BA from Northwestern. Deep interest in Islam, and her areas of expertise include women in the Islamic world, classical Islamic culture, and the Crusades. She has served on the Strategic Planning Committee, the American Research Center in Egypt, and on the American Historical Association Research Division from 2005 through 2008, which was an elected position at the time. She's been very close to our community. She's come to our convention in the past. We welcome her back and we ask her to address the convention.
Thank you for that very generous introduction. And thank you to all members of the Ahmadi community, in particular to my hosts and my friends from Houston, Texas, who have been so welcoming both in Houston and here in Harrisburg. I'm a historian. I teach and research about the past. And so what I want to talk to you about for these few minutes is why we should bother to study the past and what the role of scholarship in the study of the past should be in promoting peaceful coexistence and tolerance among religious and all other communities in the world. I feel privileged to do so in the presence of this gathering, and particularly at a Jalsa, which is honored by the presence of His Holiness. And I feel humbled at the task of doing so. Let me begin, since historians have a tendency to become abstract and no one can follow what they're saying, let me begin in the best way a historian can begin, which is by telling a story. A story that dates to the 9th century at the Abbasid court of the Caliph al-Ma'mun at the time of the Mihna, or the trial. The trials, sometimes called the Inquisition, in which various members of the elites of the Abbasid court were interrogated about the nature of their Islamic belief. Those of you who have studied the classical Islamic world know that this was a very rare and unusual event. to interrogate people about the nature of their Islamic belief. But at the time, there was a group of people called the Mu'tazila who held sway at the court of Caliph al-Ma'mun. They were rationalists, which is not in itself a bad thing, but they had a particular view of certain fundamental Islamic beliefs, a number of fundamental views that were organized around the basic question of whether or not the Quran is created in time by God or uncreated and coexistent and coterminous with the eternal God. These were hard times for people who did not believe in what the Mu'tazila believed, which was in the createdness of the Quran. And so in the course of their inquisition, they brought many people before a panel of scholars, and they asked them a variety of questions, the most important of which was, do you believe that the Quran is created or uncreated? The right answer from the Mu'tazilite point of view was that the Quran was created. This, of course, is not the view that ultimately held sway within the communities of Islam. One of the people that they brought before the Inquisition was a Turkish general named Bugha the Elder. And we learn from the historian At-Tabari that they brought Bugha in and they began to pepper him with questions. Bugha, is the Quran created or uncreated? And Bugha said, I don't know. And they asked him again, Bugha, is the Quran created or uncreated? And he said, I don't know. And they asked him a third time, is the Quran created or uncreated? And he looked at them and he said, you know, I'm just a soldier. I don't know about these matters. I only know one thing. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. There is no God but God. Muhammad is the messenger of God. And they let him go. Why is this story important for us in this gathering, or important for any historian or any thinking person who wants to understand the nature of tolerance in the past? They let him go, it would seem to us, because how can one argue with any Muslim who says the words of the Shahada? But for us to understand it in such simple terms is not to do justice to the complex theological underpinnings and exegesis of the Quran that had preceded us. Because it was possible for Bugha to give this answer and for it to be accepted only because over several centuries in the history of Islam, a very important verse of the Quran had been interpreted and reinterpreted in several different ways. And that verse is well known to you. It is, La ikraha fi din, there is no compulsion in religion. At the beginning of Islam, that verse was understood as being prescriptive. Exegetes who were explaining it to Muslim communities said, this means that God has enjoined us not to compel anyone to convert to Islam. Some people interpreted it broadly to extend to everybody except polytheists. Some people interpreted it more narrowly to refer only to Jews and Christians who accepted the political rule of the young Muslim state. At a somewhat later time, people began in practice to extend this notion of that there is no compulsion in religion to other communities who came to live under the orbit of Islam. Surprisingly, even to Hindus and Buddhists, who were considered to be among the protected peoples who were allowed to practice their religions as long as they paid the poll tax and accepted the political sovereignty of the Islamic State. But that wasn't where the matter ended, because the Quranic verse, there is no compulsion in religion, came later on to be understood in a different way. At the time of the Mu'tazilites, it came to be understood not as prescriptive, but among certain communities of Muslim exegetes, interpreters, it came to be understood as descriptive. These scholars said this is not a prescription to prohibit the forcible conversion of a non-Muslim to Islam. It describes what we know is a fact, which is that it is impossible to compel anyone in their hearts to believe anything. And so another strain of the interpretation of this verse emerged that was descriptive. And for some groups of Muslims, that in the Middle Ages, that interpretation predominated, although it predominated in different ways. For some, it meant you cannot compel someone to convert in their hearts. We don't know what exists in the hearts of human beings. Only God knows. But for some, it meant you can't compel someone to accept a belief internally, but you can compel them to act in a certain way in the world. For others, it was combined with the earlier prescriptive interpretation, in which people said, not only can we not know what's in someone's heart, we also can't compel people to convert externally. Now, what I'm giving you are only two large categories of about 6 different categories of interpretation of the verse, there is no compulsion in religion. And if I were to give you all of them and do a thorough historical lecture about this, it would take me far more than the 10 minutes or so that I have. It would take upwards of, a day or two. So why is it important for us to know this? Why is it important to have scholars who have investigated the history of the interpretation of that verse? And the scholar who has done the most work on this is not a Muslim. She's a secular scholar at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, who has written a beautiful article. Her name is Patricia Crone, a beautiful article laying out the whole history of the interpretation of this verse and of its different uses over time. It's important because for those of us who belong to communities of faith that are rooted in exegetical traditions, the interpretation of a sacred text, we know that the formation of religious traditions over time favors some interpretations and it does not favor others. And it is in the nature of religious traditions and the formations of orthodoxies and of religious canons that some interpretations over time will be perpetuated, transmitted, and passed on and become predominant, and others will fall by the wayside, be suppressed, be forgotten, not simply rejected, but forgotten. And so I believe that it is the role of the scholar to help recover the whole range of those interpretations for a very important purpose, so that we may choose from among the best of our traditions, so that we may choose interpretations that lead us down the path of peace and tolerance and of peaceful coexistence, whether those interpretations be narrow ones or broad ones. That is part of the task of the scholar, is to recover the whole range of interpretations so that we understand what is available to us as we work out the underpinnings of our own ethical and faith commitments. This is a task that is not specific either to secular scholars or to scholars who are working from within their religious traditions. It should, under the best of circumstances, be a partnership among secular and religious scholars who seek to understand the full range of opportunities to take all of us along the path of peace. And that, I believe, is what provides the ethical underpinnings for the work of scholars in the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Dr. Paula Sanders.
Thank you, Dr. Sanders, for those enlightening remarks. Our next speaker is Tina Ramirez. She's the Director of International and Government Relations at the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty, and also is a recipient of the second annual Ahmadiyya Muslim Humanitarian Award, which will be awarded later in His Holiness's presence at the dinner. Tina is the Director of International Government Relations at the Beckett Fund, where she oversees all the outreach to Congress and various executive agencies. And she also represents the Beckett Fund at international organizations on various projects. She has a prolific background. She has spoken before the UN Human Rights Council, various congressional briefings, and traveled extensively throughout the world. She most recently visited Iraq to assist refugees fleeing Baghdad and Iran to address women's rights. Her travels have taken her to refugee camps in Algeria, where she's met with government officials, civil society groups, and religious communities about many issues, including democratic development and transition, terrorism, refugees, and religious freedom in the Balkans, Serbia, Kosovo, Bosnia, Croatia. She's worked on religious freedom issues in Bangladesh, Burma, Egypt, Hungary, India, Indonesia, Israel, Lebanon, Morocco, Nigeria, Romania, Sudan, Syria, Thailand, and Turkey. She is a great friend of our community, a terrific advocate, and we are honored to present her with the award later, and we ask that she share her remarks now.
Thank you. I want to first thank His Holiness for coming to America and blessing us with his presence, for allowing us to honor him at the U.S. Congress this week, and for the Ahmadiyya community for allowing me to join you today and for honoring me with this award. I hope that I'm able to earn your respect, and I now want to share some of the things that I've done that I hope that you will find comfort in knowing that I've come alongside you and your community in working for religious freedom. In 2008, the Ahmadiyya community in Indonesia was attacked on the island of Lombok. I had an opportunity to visit this island and to meet the community there. When I visited them, I visited a mosque that had been demolished with slurs written all over the walls of the mosque, with Qurans that had been burned, and all of this simply because other Muslims in Indonesia believed that the Ahmadiyya Muslims were blasphemers. At the time, there was a movement within Indonesia to ban the Ahmadiyya movement and to restrict their worship to solely what you do in private, in your home. After this small community that I visited in Lombok was attacked, they were forced into a refugee camp where I met them. At the refugee camp, the government shut off the water, shut off supplies to their community, and eventually forced them into another refugee camp where they did a similar act. The intention was to ghettoize and to force the Ahmadiyya community to adopt what they believed was Islam. When I went back to Jakarta, I had an opportunity of meeting the man that led this attack on the Ahmadiyya community. This man came into the office where I was, and he stacked up 2 series of books this tall, and he began to explain to me why the Ahmadiyyas were blasphemers and should be banned in Indonesia. I'm sure he didn't appreciate a young woman like myself telling him that I really didn't care. Whatever the Ahmadiyyas want to believe is their human right, and I would stand to defend that right. Now, after I visited this island in Lombok and Indonesia, I knew that there was a movement there against the Ahmadiyya community that wasn't going to stop. This man that I had met was trained in Pakistan, where the blasphemy law originated to attack the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, which I'm sure you're all well aware of. And I knew that he wasn't going to stop there. A year before that, I had visited Bangladesh, which was experiencing great political turmoil. And Ahmadiyya Muslims were being threatened there as well with the blasphemy law. So when I came back to the United States, I worked for a US congressman, and we decided to try to get the US government to support work in Indonesia to challenge the blasphemy law there and this ban on the Ahmadiyya community and their right to practice Islam in public. We worked with the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty at the time, which I now work with. The Beckett Fund is a group of lawyers that defend people of all faiths around the world on religious freedom. The Beckett Fund sent lawyers to Indonesia, and what they did was they worked with a group of Muslim lawyers and Ahmadiyya Muslim lawyers and Christian lawyers, to plan a constitutional challenge to this ban on the community. They then took the case to court, and in 2010, they challenged this ban on the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Unfortunately, they were not successful. But during those 2 years, in 2008 to 2010, as we began in Congress to raise awareness about the persecution of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community from Bangladesh to Indonesia to Pakistan and even beyond, we were able to raise enough awareness that put those governments on warning that we were watching and that we were not going to allow them to continue their persecution of this important community. Now, during that time, we wrote resolutions, we drafted letters, we held hearings, we had representatives of the Ahmadiyya community come and speak. We did a number of different things. Thankfully, Congress and their attention to this issue was able to make a difference. There's still a lot of work to be done, but as you saw this last Wednesday when the Congress introduced a resolution recognizing the importance of His Holiness's trip to America, it was a step forward in recognizing that religious freedom cannot be defended in isolation. It's not something that's just for Americans, it's something that's universal. It's something that's not for Ahmadiyya Muslims, and not just for Christians or Hindus or anybody else. It's for people of all faith or no faith. There's a saying from the Holocaust that goes, they came after the communists, but I wasn't a communist, so I didn't do anything. And then they came after the socialists, but I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't do anything. And then they came after the Jews, but I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't do anything. But then they came after me, and there was no one left to stand up for me. The reason that I'm here today is because unless we come alongside each other as minority faith communities around the world and as individual human beings that want to seek and worship as we choose, we will never defeat religious persecution. We have to come alongside each other to defend this important human right. I want to thank you for this opportunity and this time to share with you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you over the next few years to challenge the blasphemy law in Pakistan, to challenge the ban in Indonesia, and to go forward to make sure that people know that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is a powerful force for defending human freedom and religious freedom for all people around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. The final speaker is Paul Montero, who is the Associate Director, the Office of Public Engagement at the White House. We're very honored and privileged to have him here with us. Mr. Montero serves as a liaison to Arab Americans, faith-based and secular belief communities, and assists in coordinating the White House Mentorship Program. He worked for then Senator Obama in his Senate office in 2006, before joining the Obama for America campaign in Chicago as the National Deputy Director of Religious Affairs. He is a graduate of the University of Maryland and the Howard University School of Law. He has previously worked at the U.S. Supreme Court, at 2 Washington, D.C. law firms, and he spent a year teaching at a local public charter school. It is indeed a pleasure to welcome Paul to our convention.
Assalamu alaikum. Well, it's really an honor for me to join you here at your convention this year. I was told I have 3 minutes, and I'll be very brief. We just literally got here to Harrisburg about 30 minutes ago, and I wanted to speak a bit about the work that we have been doing in the White House, in the office I work in, the Office of Public Engagement. After being there for 3.5 years, you can see how the job has aged me. I'm going to start dyeing my hair gray, I think, to look a little older. But the question is, with everything happening in Washington now, why come up to Harrisburg this weekend? Now, in our office in the White House, we are always trying to connect with Americans, groups of committed and dedicated Americans that are working to feed those who are hungry. In the Office of Public Engagement at the White House, we are always trying to talk to groups of Americans who are concerned with those who might not have a place to sleep or a roof over their heads. In our office in the White House, we always try to meet with Americans and groups of stakeholders who are concerned with the rights of marginalized peoples and minority groups in this country. In our office, we are always trying to find like-minded individuals who are concerned with the health of our neighbors, whatever color they are, wherever they may live in this country, however much money they might make or not. It's our job to be in touch with them. It's our job to be in touch with those who are concerned with the immigration crisis in this country. It's our job to be in touch with those who are concerned with how are we educating the next generation of Americans. It's our job in the White House to connect with those who are concerned with how to strengthen the American family. And many of you in this hall right now may not be Americans by birth, but most importantly, you're Americans by choice. So why would I come to Harrisburg this weekend? Because your community on all of these issues has been concerned with the rights of marginalized peoples, concerned with those who are going without, those who might not have an idea of where their next meal is coming from, where they might sleep tonight, how they'll care for their own health or the health of their family, and how strengthened their family is in the months and years ahead. You all in your community are a central part of what makes this country great. And the faith that you hold as Muslims are a key part of what strengthens this country that we all love. The faith that you hold contributes to the fabric of this country. And I don't want there to be any misunderstanding that the White House itself understands that when we look at who is truly contributing to the national interest to make this country the strongest it can be, I could easily point to this convention this weekend and point to all of you and the work that you do, not for recognition, not for affirmation, not for a paycheck, not for a government grant, but because the best of your faith tells you it is your job to care for humanity. And so on behalf of our office, I simply wanted to say thank you very much for what you do every day. And I'm so honored to be here at this year's convention, given that His Holiness
Narae Takbir. Mr. Paul Montero. Mr. Paul Montero. Narae Takbir.
And thank you very much for your attention. God bless you all.
USA! 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 Jamaat-e Ahmadiyya USA! Narae Takbir! Islam Ahmadiyyat! Mirza Ghulam Ahmad ki! Khilafat-e Ahmadiyya! Hazrat Amirul Momineen! Narae Takbir!
Thank you, Paul, for those kind remarks, and we look forward to seeing you at the dinner later. We have had a number of officials this year send letter and video greetings, numerous, many dozens of members of Congress, members of state legislatures. We've received petitions and proclamations from many mayor's offices. I'll read a few of the names, and the full extent of those letters and those remarks we have tweeted in the USA Jalsa Twitter handle, so you can catch that online. U.S. Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson, U.S. Senator Pat Toomey, Congressman Charlie Dent, Congresswoman Allison Schwartz, Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, Congressman David Price, Congressman Peter Roskam, the Illinois governor, Maryland governor, the Pennsylvania governor, the mayor of Allentown, the mayor of Plano, Texas, the mayor of Harrisburg, the mayor of Bethlehem. We've received petitions and proclamations from various state legislatures, which include the Maryland State Legislature and the Pennsylvania State Legislature as well. So from all across the country, there's been unanimous support for this particular convention, and also special acknowledgement for the presence of His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad. So that concludes this program, and I now turn it back to the chair.
Jazakallah. I want to thank all the participants, those who come and spoke, and those who showed up and sat through the meeting to share their concern for the values that we are promoting today in this particular session. The Quran tells us that proclaim that let us come together on the issue that there is one God and we all worship Him. This gathering is a celebration of that edict of the Quran and that universal truth which is necessary. God, by our belief and by belief of, I think, most people in this world, shines His grace when people behave this way. And I'm very happy that all of you and me and our visitors were a part of this phenomenon today. Thank you very much. Jazakallah.
सद शुक्र है, सद शुक्र है, सद शुक्र खुदा का।